Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Millman, and I am a specialist at the Parent Resource Center. I want to welcome you to Managing the Moments, Strategies for Families to Create Confidence in the Midst of Chaos and Uncertainty. All right, I'd also like to introduce Corinne Coppola. She will be presenting for us. So Corinne, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and a true honor. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. So excited to be here. And I want to applaud you all for showing up today, because this is the first step in terms of improving your home life, right? Is like showing up for yourself, showing up for your family, being willing to be open and learn new things. And I want to tell you right now that you are wonderful, okay? Right from the bat. Like, you are right where you're supposed to be. You are the perfect parent, the perfect guardian for the children that you are stewarding through this life. So I just want you to take a deep breath in that and just know that you are amazing right now. That being said, we are going to do something called an internal weather system that I like to do in any presentation that I do. I'm also an adjunct professor a part-time professor at GW's, George Washington University's Millikan School of Public Health. I teach meditation there, 2 sections. And always when we enter the classroom, the virtual classroom now, I do this weather system check. And it's a really handy way to use, another way to get really some information or communication and connection going with anyone that we're in a group with. So this also will work if you're in a work setting that would permit it. So the internal weather system is just sort of what it says. Like, how are we doing? So people often say to us, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine, I'm good. That doesn't really give us a lot of information. And, our children might turn away, or they might say, they might even grunt at us if they're middle school or high school, or close the door on us, So this is a way for us to really understand what's going on. And also, weather changes all of the time. We have, especially here in Northern Virginia, right, where we can wake up and it's snowing, and then it can be icy, and then it can be sunny, and then it can be cloudy, all in one day. And that's how our moods are, is that we're ruled by our emotions. Our weather systems are really ruled by our emotions. So this helps us keep in touch with what's going on inside of us. So, for example, today I woke up a little foggy because I woke up a little late, so it was a little foggy today. And then right now I'm feeling really sunny. It's about 70 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. So for you all, if you could just drop in what your weather system is saying, or what's going on, what's the present condition of your weather system? If you can just kindly drop that in the chat, that would be helpful to me. And you can do this at home at the dinner table. You can do this in passing. Just describe your weather system. And it can be, the children can have so much fun with this, because they can put temperature. Like I've had some teens like talk about the dew on the grass, so they can get as detailed, and just encourage them, because this can be really like a fun activity, Thanks, Erica. It is a great idea. I really appreciate it, because it helps me direct the conversation. And like, they can say, hey, I'm not in a really, I'm foggy, it's overcast, I'm feeling a little dreary. And then you can ask questions like, what are you needing? Do you need a little? And like, just to give them a little space. And you can say to yourself, you can say to them too, like, hey, I'm feeling a little overcast and dreary right now. I'm needing some time to myself. So more that it's all about modeling. That's really what this presentation is going to talk about, is like, how are we doing as parents or guardians over our children. So right now, this might be an occasional, weather system in our home, right, where it's cold and there's icebergs, and because of the effects of COVID and everything else over the past year, we're coming up on the 1 year mark. It's hard to believe that, but we are. In some ways, it feels like yesterday, and in some ways, it feels like it's been 10 years, right? So we all know the effects of COVID, these increased feelings of disconnection and isolation. There's more mental health issues around anxiety and depression. There's increased substance use. All of us are, really tackling some issues with fatigue and just this longing for like physical connection. And although I also want to acknowledge those in the room that have found this period to be very thriving. I have a few friends that are introverts, and they're loving this time. So it's not all down in the dumps, right? And so what I'd like to find out now, I have a friend who's a middle school teacher down in North Carolina, and she sent me this photo of two of the teachers in terms of, early in the school year and what they were doing to alleviate the stress of COVID. So I thought this was a really great photo to show, because we forget about how to have fun. So go ahead and drop in the chat, if you would, what are some ways you've been managing the stress of COVID? Yoga with Adrienne. Oh, I love her. Yeah. Chocolate, love it. Crocheting, sleep, taking walks and reading, board games, family walks after dinner, jogging, cooking more, family bike rides, reading to the kip, setting up a camping tent inside and having a pretend trip. Great. Listen to educational webinars, walking, sitting. These are lovely. Calligraphy, board games. Okay, you guys have it down. Fun movies. Yeah. So this idea of like fun and laughter and play is so important. They've done studies around recess in school, and it's not so much that they get to go outside. The impact is their ability to be creative. I think it's something like 25-30% increase in creativity when we have this play aspect in our lives. So it's really important. Like, how can I be silly? And that idea of the setting up a tent in the house and going on a pretend trip. And I've also seen, like, this is a lot of pressure for the adults. So I haven't done this myself, but I've seen like some families do like one theme a week, like a dinner night theme. So you can be really creative around this. And this is what I call, this is the now normal, right? There's probably no end in sight right now in terms of us having to mask up when we go in public. And it's really a time of grief and trauma. And I call this a time of like visible and invisible loss. There's a ton of physical loss that our country and the world has been navigating, right? But it's also the invisible loss, the things that we can't see, the ways that we can't publicly comfort one another during times of grief. There's the uncertainty, the doubt, the fear, the anxiety, depression, all these things underneath. And it's sort of like, well, how do we deal with these difficult emotions, right? Because they're there, and they're going to come out and grab us if we don't navigate through them. And this is what we may be experiencing right now, is a lot of like the stress and this conflict, this disconnection, right? So if you would be kind enough, if you can tell me in the chat once again, like, what are maybe your one or two biggest obstacles or challenges that you and your family are facing right now? If you feel comfortable doing that in the chat, because you're not alone, I promise you. Homeschooling, Right. So what is it about homeschooling? No consistency, kids being at home all the time, so sibling conflict, no sports, loneliness, the frustration, trying to work while kids and patience between siblings, bickering, computer issues, helicopter parenting, no place for a break. Oh, yeah. No motivation, being new to the area and trying to help the teen connect with new friends. Yeah. Yeah. No learning, getting kids to go outside, online. Yeah, teens home all the time. So I just really want to speak to this because my children my children are different ages, 18, 20, and 22, right? So I've been through a lot of this. And my youngest, he's a senior in high school right now, and him being able to like express how he's feeling, and like there is no time for breaks, you know, in the home, and us being on, like, his bedroom is right next door to my office, so we're working, you know, consistently next to each other. um, and just these feelings of isolation, right? Like very tough emotionally on us, the siblings together all the time, being a single mom with full-time care. Yeah, we just, so how do we find time for these breaks, right? How do we find time? And it's really important for us to be able to find time, because the quality of our life depends on the quality of our relationships. So this is a quote from a psychologist by the name of Dr. Esther Perel, and I think she is really brilliant when it comes to relationships and how we feel about ourselves. Like, think about it, right? So when we have a disagreement at work or we feel cut off from a friend, that is one of the most, or, you know, we're in a struggle with our children or our partner, or a friend, that can really override anything else that's going on in our lives, right? Is how we feel about ourselves because of this conflict. Like, who out there, let me ask you this. I bet that there's one or two things that constantly are, you're mulling over in your mind. Like, it's the situation or the scenario that you wake up with. It's the one that, you know, you're driving in the car, it's really present. It's the one that wakes you up in the middle of the night, right? We all have these issues or this story that is running through our head. And the more that we can recognize, oh, that's a story I'm telling myself, and come back to the present moment and like right here. So we'll do a little, just a grounding exercise right now. That hopefully, you know, will bring you a little bit of a peace of mind. It can also be called applied attention. So I'm going to invite you to just close your eyes for a moment if that's accessible to you, or you can cast your eyes down. And you're just going to wiggle your toes. So feel your feet on the floor or the ground, and just wiggle your toes and just notice the sensation of the big toe, the toes in between, the little toe. Maybe even notice the heel of the foot and the arch. Just play. And if you want, you can even stand up. You know, I recently purchased a standing desk for myself. And go ahead and stand up and do this and notice the difference between the two. And then you can take a deep breath and then exhale. And just open your eyes. And so the more that we come back to the body, another thing you can do, the more we come back to the body, the more we can be present with what is actually happening and take us out of the story in our heads. Because we tend to react to what's going on from the place of the story in our minds. Okay, so for example, before I show you another exercise, we often, I'm going to say myself, okay, I sometimes, often react from a place of fear with my children. For example, a couple of weeks ago, my son is in club soccer, and so travel soccer, and he was playing a game down in Richmond, and we needed to go down there for the day, and I needed to get some work done. So I said to him, let's split the car ride if you can drive either there or on the way back. And he said, well, I'll drive on the way back. And I thought to myself, oh no, he won't. He's going to get in the car and he's going to say, I'm too tired to drive. I can't drive. Can't you just drive? And it'll be this whole argument, blah, 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 blah. So instead of my wise, responding from my wise self, I looked at him and I said, listen, I just don't want you to be a crybaby, okay, on the way back. And he looked at me, he said, did you just call me a crybaby? And I went, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. These things, and that came from a place of fear because I was feeling really pressured about the work I needed to do. And here he was. Has anybody done something like this? Said something that they regret? I call this one of the toothpaste moments. When you squeeze a tube of toothpaste and you can't ever get the toothpaste back in. So yeah, we're all human, right? And I'm grateful that he is who he is and he was able to recover and didn't have this dark cloud, and we were able to repair. And at the same time, being strong in my parenting and being like, oh wow, I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. We all make mistakes, right? So that we can model for them like our own imperfections, and yet not get stuck in the shame of them, right? Like I didn't go into the story of, I'm such a bad mother. I can't believe I said that, for very long. I did it for a moment. And then I'm like, oh no, it's okay. I made a mistake. Let's move on, So another exercise we can do is if you take the palm of one hand and the fingertips of the opposite hand and just do little circles in the hand. And you can close your eyes for this, or you can keep them open. And just bring exquisite attention to the fingertips, to the palm of the hand, and just notice how that feels. And then you can just take the tips of the fingertips on one hand and rub them against your thumb. So as if like back and forth, and really notice the ridges of the fingertips. Just take a moment and do that. So what we're doing when we just bring our attention to our fingertips or our hands or our toes or our feet is we're coming right now into the present moment. We're taking our brain. So if we think of our brain, and the back part of our brain is the limbic system, and the front part of the brain is the the prefrontal cortex. The wise owl is what I call it for the younger children. Right? We have the barking dog in the back. So you can describe the brain to your children in this way, that we have this barking dog in the back, and then we have the wise owl in the front for those of you with the younger children. Or for those of you Star Wars fans, we call it maybe the Darth Vader brain in the back, and then the Jedi, the Yoda brain in the front, right? So what we're doing is really this Jedi training. Like we're bringing our attention to the front of the brain so that we can be here right now. And these little tips that I just showed you need to be done, during the day, during different points of the day. Maybe you're in a meeting, so you're going to set your alarm on your phone, or whatever reminder would be best for you. That way you're going to come back into the present moment, because the more we do this training of our brain from bringing our reaction from the back to the front, the more we're going to respond with not the crybaby response, right? The more, it maybe a couple of years ago, what I would have responded to him instead of even crybaby, it might have been, are you kidding me? you're not going to, are you sure? Are you sure? Do you promise? Blah, 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 blah. You know, I would have gone down that road, which is really not helpful either. We have to believe and trust the moment as they arise. I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is the power to choose our response. And in that space is our freedom. And Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who wrote, you know, The Meaning of Life, said this. And if any one of us, if he can do this, we can do it. We can just remember to pause and take a breath, so that we can then have better connection with our families. So this is something, you know, that you need to ask yourself. Am I a thermostat in my home or a thermometer? So a thermostat, as you know, sets the temperature of your home. And the thermometer will give you a reading of what the temperature is. So as the thermostat, I would think, so who wants to be a thermostat? Does anyone want to be a thermostat? You can raise your hand or just drop it in the chat, right? Yes. We want to be thermostats. And it's much, of course, yes, it's much easier said than done. Hi, Renee, I see that you have your hand up. One moment. So the thermostat or the thermometer? Renee, if you can drop your question, I guess, in the chat, or we can take a little pause here. Oh, that was me answering yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So here, the self-care, okay? You all talked about the things that you were doing to navigate the stress, you know, this is, how can I say, because you are the thermostat, right? If we have a broken thermostat in our home, we have no idea how to manage the temperature, right? We call a repairman, they come in, or repair person, they come in, they fix it. We would not let the thermostat be broken for very long in our home. The same needs to go for us, you know? And self-care is not necessarily massages or vacations. It's really about deliberately taking care of your well-being through restorative activities. It's the practice of taking an active role in protecting your own well-being and happiness during periods of stress. So for example, do you know that if you wake up in the morning and look at the news, this is before the pandemic, this research that I'm going to give you. So if you look at the news first thing in the morning, whether it's reading, you know, reading it on your phone or a newspaper or watching it on TV, you have almost a 30% chance of having a bad day, 30% more chance of having a bad day than if you didn't look at it. So that's number one. You can just do that, you know. What was the word before reaction and pause? Okay, here. Response. If you're looking for the between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space is the power to choose our response, and in that space is our freedom. Okay, perfect. So self-care is really, really important. Okay, so if you need to take, like, we say to ourselves, oh, I can't go in my room and close the door for 10 minutes. Like, I have carved out 20 minutes a day, that sometimes it's not 20 minutes, but it's in the middle of the afternoon. I'll block my calendar from 3 to 3:30, and I'll either take a quick walk, I will do, maybe I'll do a body scan, like just 10 minutes, put my head down. Maybe I'll just go lift weights for 10 minutes, whatever it is, jumping jacks, listening to a favorite song, but you have to make that time. And it's easy for me to say, I know, because I don't have elementary school kids. I don't have preschool kids right now. God bless you that, you know, you have a lot of, you're warriors, like true warriors. Wisdom warriors, I'm going to call you, right? And that being said, then it's up to you to wake up 10 minutes earlier, or is it 10 minutes at the end of the day? You have to absolutely, as if your life depended on it, make sure that your tank is really being restored. So when I was learning to drive, my parents drilled it in my head, do not go below a quarter of a tank, right? Do not go, this was before cell phones, and they did not want me as a young woman being stranded somewhere without gas. That being said, we do it to ourselves all the time. We go below the quarter of a tank and we hit burnout. And then what happens? Okay. Right. By the time I get to the end of the day, I have no energy to do anything. Yes, I can't imagine, because that's how I felt when they were younger too. So is there some place in the day, just 10 minutes, or, I used to wake up, didn't matter, at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym to get to that 6 a.m. class, because that was my lifeblood, when the children were really small. So what is it that you can do, that you can have, that you can give yourself, even if it's just a song and you do a dance party together or whatever it is, but having this compassion for yourself. The small things really matter. How much screen time are you using? Turn your phone off one day a week. Give yourself a break. Get outside. Just merely, if you just go out the front door, put the children in their cribs, go outside the front door and take 5 to 10 breaths. They're fine. They're okay. Like, open the front door and stand there, right? So we have to do what we can do. Make sure that you're moving your body. Do you know that every hour, if you just do nothing else but move 20 to 30 steps every hour, your overall happiness will go up. Your daily routine matters. Again, screen time, watch your alcohol intake, right? Because our kids are watching us. What are you eating? How are you sleeping? These things are like, we are still, I think we forget, everyone, that we are still in the midst of a global pandemic, okay? And oftentimes, I think I find myself falling back into this, like, well, I should, by this time, it's been almost a year, I should be able to function at the same level I was functioning before the pandemic. We're in the middle of a pandemic, right? And I see Marie said, it's hard not to feel like I need to be doing all the time. Yes, you have to. We are human beings, not human doings. We have to give ourselves a break. The research shows us that. I have this slide. My childhood was not hunky-dory. There was a lot of, you would not know it. You can't see me right now, but you would not know the past that I have navigated, right? The different kinds of situations of abuse and trauma I navigated through. And that shows up in our parenting. And I just really want to acknowledge that. And I'm not saying, like, what I'm saying is that our reactions, like, my brain might be different than someone whose brain was not raised in the way that I was, right? So, and most of us who are on this probably know about the adverse childhood experiences. So our brains are more sensitive. So actually, those of us who may have experienced challenging situations, we want to, like, the last thing we want to do is impart that on our children, right? However, our brains are susceptible to the adrenaline and cortisol levels that we had as children. And then we bring that into our adulthood, because we then become addicted to that cycle of adrenaline and cortisol. And so we look for it in our relationships and in our interactions. So it's just something to sit with, like, and be compassionate about, like, oh, of course I feel this way. Now this slide is more, and I'll talk a little bit more about compassion as we get through the presentation. Negative emotions, negative thoughts, we have, how many thoughts do you all think that we have a day? How many thoughts do you all think we have a day? Just drop it in the chat. Just guess. How many thoughts do you think we have? 1,000, 100,000, 2,000, 180,000, 100,000, 5,000, millions, 83. Okay, yeah. So our minds are constantly going. It is not something that's going to stop. We can't stop the train of our minds. And there's actually research that we have between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day. So we're not going to stop them. But what we can do is we can watch them, like this lion, right? We can watch these stories that are happening and we can say, oh, I'm not going to be engaged in that behavior right now. I'm not going to get attached to that story right now. I want to be the lion. I don't want to be the monkey, right? Our monkey mind, of these thousands of thoughts that we have, we reiterate over and over and over. 80% of them are negative because of our wiring, okay? And because of our wiring, we also are repeating the same negative thoughts over and over. Like worry, our emotion of worry, I heard this last week. I thought it was a great quote. Worry is like praying for things that you don't want to happen. Worrying is like praying for things you don't want to happen. So when you see that thought arise, you know, that impulse arise, how can I come back to the present moment right now? Let me wiggle my toes. You know, that's something that they actually teach Navy SEALs, is wiggling their toes. So I'm going to show you a few different things during our time together. And these are things you can show your children too. Like anything that I'm showing you, please share with your children. So another thing, go ahead if you would, just for a moment, and you can close your eyes or cast them down. And as you do this, just notice the sounds outside the room of where you're sitting. Just notice the sounds. What can you hear? And then notice the sounds that are closer in, maybe inside the room where you're sitting or listening to this. And then notice all the sounds together. Maybe even place a hand on your heart and notice the sensation of the breath. And then gently open your eyes or lift them up. And what did you notice? You can just drop it in the chat. Did you hear anything that maybe you didn't notice before this exercise? Feels calming, hum of the refrigerator. Right. Clicking sound. Birds at the bird feeder. Oh, how lovely. Okay, great. Yes. You have a wild child in the background. So this is it, right? This is also like, this is life happening because, oh, the wild child, oh, listen, they're making that noise. So all we're doing is bringing attention to the sounds. We're not bringing any judgment like, oh, this is really distracting. Like when we notice that our mind is going into story, and this is something that you can do before every meeting on Zoom. Maybe you do it at the dinner table. Like, let's just close our eyes and notice what are the sounds that you can hear. Who can hear the furthest sound? Like, make it sort of a game, right? Can someone hear their heartbeat? Can you hear your breath? Like, it just brings us back into the moment so that we can be this wise, discerning lion and not the monkey, right? That's all over the place. So now I'm going to ask you, bring to mind one of your children. And then what is their superpower? What is something that you really love about your child? Creativity. a friend to all, empathy, deep thinking, kind, caring, silliness, passion and love. Yeah, this is all lovely. Imagination, confidence, never in a hurry, his humor, curiosity, honest and hardworking, being in the moment. This is all so lovely. So one of your tasks today or this weekend is to tell your child, whether you write them, you can write them a card, right? It's Valentine's Day. But to remember to keep this, maybe you even want to put it on a Post-it note on your mirror when you look at it in the morning. Like, oh, this is what I love about my child, right? This is what I love about them. So that we can focus on and and really accentuate the positive, right? That and and the same for us. I'm going to ask you, what is your superpower? What would be one of the things that you say that your friends or your loved ones would say that they really love about you? What is a quality that is your superpower? Comic relief, love it, Renee. Sincerity, genuine, loving. People say I feel like home. Oh, how lovely. Yeah, so your superpowers, bringing people together. Yeah, kind and thoughtful. Beautiful. So this is an exercise, humor. I love it. This is an exercise that's so important because our brains are wired for negativity, right? We're wired to look for what isn't working. We need to shift, like just like we have physical activity and we keep our physical health, this is about our mental health and the health of our mind and our brain. Because we often think, oh, well, we make decisions logically, and I'm going to tell you that is not true. We make our decisions from an emotional place. We always do. We're emotional human beings, right? Even those of us that are most logical, we still tend to make our decisions from an emotional place. Our reactions come from our emotions. So we can't deny this part of ourselves. We have to honor it and we have to let it be there. Another exercise, you all may or may not be familiar with this, is also the rosebud and thorn exercise. So this is another lovely thing that you can do when your children are going to bed at night or maybe at dinner, whatever it is what is your rose? So the rose is something positive that happened. What is your thorn? Something negative. And then a bud is something you're looking forward to. And this can be challenging. I'm just going to say, the teenagers, because, I used to do this with when they were teens in my home, as well as when they were young. It got progressively harder to get information out of them. So I just want to let you know that that's okay. Another question that I would ask is, what is one kind thing someone did for you, or what is one kind thing that you did for someone else? And even if I just got, my middle son, he was classic on this. He would say, well, I opened the door for someone. And that would be okay. I know that he probably did a lot more than that, but that's okay. He was more of a private person. And, so these ideas, just how can we accentuate the positive? Because where the attention goes, the energy flows. Okay? It is so important to remember this. So important. And this is where I talk a little bit about gratitudes, and maybe when you're going to bed at night or when you wake up in the morning, to write down 3 things that you're grateful for. Maybe you get a gratitude buddy. I have had a gratitude buddy for the last 5 years. Lives on the other coast. We don't talk often. We were friends, and this is something that we do. We text each other daily or every other day, what we're grateful for. And this is another opportunity you can use with your children. The other question that I love is, what did you do well today? asking yourself that. And I'm going to tell you that you already did a number of things well. First of all, you showed up for the seminar, right? You got out of bed. Maybe you're still in bed, but you woke up. That's another good thing. If you're on this call, I'm trusting that you woke up healthy, right? You got yourself breakfast, maybe you got yourself showered. That's like 5 things right there. We have to really pay attention to the small things, because it's in the small things that the big changes happen. Okay, so I'm giving you, like, what I call this is like a buffet of different things that you can do. Do not expect to do all of them. You're going to pick one thing that you're going to focus on after this webinar. Okay, because we have this, oh, I've got to do everything. And so for those of you who have teens or will have teens, this is something to keep in mind. And I just really want to honor that adolescence now starts at age 10 and goes through age 25. Okay, so if your 10-year-old or maybe even 9-year-old is showing some adolescent behavior, you might be like, wow, I don't understand where this is coming from, you know. And there's a great book that's called Brainstorm by Dan Siegel that Dr. Dan Siegel, that I highly recommend, that you can read and your team can read along with you, that talks about brain development. And just so you know, some of you may be struggling with like screen time, right? So their developing brain, if you see, this is a pictorial. It's a humorous pictorial, but the addiction part of their brain, the teen brain is much more sensitive to stress. They need a higher hit of dopamine to get those feel-good feelings, okay? So we might be really frustrated with their video gaming. We might be frustrated with their time on Instagram or Snapchat, but they need a higher dose of that dopamine than you and I do. And that's an important thing to remember. And their friendships are like the air that they breathe. And at the same time, you are, as their parent or guardian, the most important person in their life. Okay, you are the most influential person in their life. But we often, thank you, Valerie, for putting that in the chat, the No Drama Discipline. Anything by Dr. Dan Siegel is fabulous. And he will say this too, that you as the parent are the most influential person in your child's life for their lifetime. So even though it may feel like we have to take a back seat, what we say and what we do matters the most to our teens. And I just want to say that. And again, ages 10 through 25. So what you may be seeing and hearing above the line, you might see excessive screen time or complaining or defiance or disrespect, you know, sneaking around, swearing, fighting, leaving. And yeah, you'll get the slides after the webinar. And then underneath, there's worry and boredom and helplessness and just like this disconnection. And this was created before the pandemic, okay? And one thing that we also need to remember about the stress response is, like, you know, we have the fight, flight, and freeze, but we also have feigning death, right? Where we fake this death, and that's where the lack of motivation, like our teenager, or we might be experiencing like this lack of motivation, which is completely the antithesis of how we're used to showing up in the world. And then, you know, we can't get off the couch or we can't get out of bed, and we become even more frustrated with ourselves. And it's not helpful. It's like, oh, of course I feel this way. This is what's going on right now. So just giving yourself a little bit of time and space, and this be how we're feeling, right? Is like we have to carry the world on our back, right? We have to carry the world on our back, but it doesn't have to be this way. We can actually have the opportunity and ability to have connection with those we love around us. It is possible. We have to slow down and be present. So self-compassion, this is like my favorite part of teaching anything, is really this ability to be compassionate with ourselves. So let's do, before I dive into this, we'll do a little brief exercise right now. Does anybody have any questions? Uh, that's how I feel carrying a huge rock on my back. Yes. So you can give yourself a little massage on your neck, you know? Of course you feel this way. So we'll do a little exercise right now. Go ahead and if it works for you, again, you can close your eyes or cast them down. And you can take a few deep breaths. Really breathe into the belly. We don't often do this. And just this simple act of taking the deep breaths helps us to shift our mind into more of the relaxation response. And that's where we want to be. That's where we want our nervous system to be, is in the relaxation response. So take those deep breaths. And then as you're ready, you can place a gentle hand on your heart. And just by placing your hand on your heart is like giving yourself a hug. And your serotonin levels increase. Those hormones that help us feel calmer and more relaxed, more connected, just simply by placing a hand on our heart. And with this, I'm going to invite you to think of a situation or a person that may have been presenting a challenge to you this past week or recently. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you are not going to pick someone that is a 7 or above. You're going to pick something, you know, that's less than 7, that's a 6 or below, and just bring that situation to mind. Really notice the person or the time of day, maybe the interaction. And notice any physical sensations that are happening in your body. So check in with the area around the face, the shoulders, the neck, the chest, the belly, and just notice anything that's happening. You may feel a rapid heartbeat. You may feel some stomach pains. You may feel butterflies in your stomach. You may feel tension around your jaw. You may feel a weight at your chest. Whatever it is, just notice it and name it for yourself. So you will just say heart racing, sweaty palms, whatever it is. And then you'll notice the emotion. So notice the feeling. Is it worry? Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it sadness? So just name it. And then from here, just saying to yourself things that you would say to a dear friend or a loved one. Like maybe it's, of course, I feel this way. I'm doing the absolute best that I can. I'm trying so hard. It will all work out. It will all be okay. I see how hard you're trying. I love you. I know this is tough right now. I have your back. It's okay. And whatever other statements or phrases you might want to say that you would say to a friend that makes sense to you. Go ahead and say them to yourself right now. And taking some deep breaths. And then as you're ready, gently opening your eyes. And just let me know how that was for you in the chat. What did you notice? Comforting. Mantras are helpful, calming, tension in the shoulders and jaw. At the end was calming, soothing, lovely, feeling more forgiving. Yeah, calmer, relaxing, warm. Yeah, so we go through life like white knuckling it, right? Like we've got to push through. If we work harder, if I read more books, if I go to more lectures, if, then, right? Yeah, so this is a reset exercise. Calm and self-awareness, right? So we white knuckle our way because that's the way our culture is, right? That's the way we've been taught is like, if we just work hard, we'll be more successful, we'll be a better parent. And that's not the way, actually. Studies have shown that, like, this is why New Year's resolutions don't work, people, actually, is because we pick the thing that we hate about ourselves the most, and then we want to change it, right? And so within the first 30 days, it's out the window. It's like 88%, I think, of New Year's resolutions aren't held after 6 weeks. You know, that's crazy. And that's because we like white knuckling through our lives. And we're looking at what isn't working, where we need to just, hold ourselves in a higher self-regard. We have to parent ourselves in ways that maybe we weren't parented, right? So we have to parent ourselves. And this is a way that we can bring calm. Like, and this is not something, again, that is done overnight. Like, I was making the bed, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I had gotten the sheets distraught. You know how it is when you're making the bed and it pops up. And I actually said out loud to myself, "It's okay, darling, try again." I was like, what? What did I just say to myself? And so to me, like, again, these are practices, right? We don't change things overnight. We didn't get to be the way we are today overnight. So being patient with ourselves, being compassionate, like if we try to white knuckle, and you can do that yourself right now, just close your hands and fists and like squeeze your body as much as you can, like just tighten it up, like nothing can get in. But if we release and take a breath and open our hands, change can actually happen. And they've done research about self-compassion. Like people are happier, you're less stressed, you're more resilient. So, your child has disturbed you for the 50th time or maybe the 500th time today. Like placing the hand on the heart and say, of course, this is what it is. I love you anyway. It's okay. Like, it's okay. You're right where you're supposed to be. Our struggle, our suffering is because we want it to be different than what it is right now. And if we can just be in, it's this way right now, right? But we tend to want to numb out. We are the most addicted, the most obese, the most this, the most that, of ever in the human race. And if we can just slow down, even slowing down in our speech, right? What areas of my life can I just slow down and take a pause and bring comfort to myself? We've got to be able to comfort ourselves. So again, that we are the thermostat and we are modeling what we want our children to say, do, and be in the world. And here's, you know, this might be a stretch, okay? But I'm going to ask you to hang with me on this. When I heard this, it was like a huge aha moment for me. Conflict is an opportunity for renewal. Let that sink in. Conflict is an opportunity for renewal. So asking ourselves, again, this is a shift in mindset, like, what can I learn here? What am I learning about myself? What am I learning about my child? Like, we all have needs. As human beings, we have needs that need to be met, right? We have needs of wanting to belong. We have needs of wanting to connect. That is the biggest, right? The biggest indicator of our longevity of life is our relationships with others. We want to be connected. And so, this is another thing around communication. We don't share to be fixed, we share to be seen. And everyone needs a loving witness. So the more that we can pause and we can respond to what is going on in front of us, oh, I love this. So Marissa said, every time I took a bad picture, my teacher would ask, what did you learn from this? And I heard a story too, like that of a father who used to ask at the dinner table, what did you fail at this week? What did you fail at? Yeah, it really changed your mindset because everyone fails. Great. And how did you handle it? Right? So we want to be seen. So instead of trying to fight with someone and having them change, being able to reflect back, like, I see you're having a tough moment, right? This looks really hard for you. I'm just going to skip ahead with here. So compassionate communication, the stop method, stop and then validate. So we stop, we pause, we're curious and we're open. Like, oh, can I take a breath? Can I feel my toes? Can I rub my fingers? Like, let's just be here right now. I'm just going to be here right now. I'm going to forget everything that's going on. I'm going to be present. You're going to take a breath. So you're going to notice your physical sensations, just like we did. Like, oh, what am I noticing? My feet on the ground. I'm feeling a little agitated right now. Observe, like, identify what's going on. What's the need that you have? And then proceed, right? Then we do the next best step. Is it possible? I'm confused. Can you explain? I am wondering if. Now, the first thing that I have to say about stop is that we're going to check in and see if it's a good time to have this conversation, right? So we're going to check in with ourselves, like, is this really the right time to bring this up? And we're going to check in with the other person. I'd really like to talk to you about blah, blah. Or I can see that you're really agitated right now. I want to be able to hear you and see you. I need 10 minutes. You need to say and set a time. Like, I need 10 minutes or I need 24 hours, but it's not going to be more than 24 hours. That's a pact that you have to make. That discussion will happen, or I should say, and that discussion happens and you're committing, because then you're building trust, right? And you have to take, like, so often, I'll knock on my son's door and we've had to work out of a pattern where he thinks I'm going to jump all over him about something, or I'm going to make a request. And when he says no, I have to back away from that door. And I have to respect that. And it's not my way in that moment. And I'll say, okay, I'll come back in a half hour, or whatever I've worked out with him. And then be able to get a yes, So we have to be open to something different happening. Like conflict is an opportunity for renewal. It's an opportunity for us to trust. So after we go through this, then we have to validate. I hear you are saying, I see that, I'm wondering if you're feeling, I see that you're feeling that, disappointed or hurt or sad, and let them have their feelings. Let the other person, it's so hard to do that, especially with our children. We just want to fix everything. But the more that we're able to model for them these difficult moments and that they can navigate it, that they have the skills, that we know that they can do it, we're all so much better off, right? That it is possible. And then this is the slide I use for boundaries. Like, if you can think of boundaries as, I loved this description that I heard recently was, if you think of a river flowing and you think of the banks on the river, and those banks hold the water in, right? And the banks churn over time. The banks of the river, they change over time. And our boundaries can be that as well. So these trees are lining the street. They're sort of boundaries for the street. But I love the visual in terms of, there's protection in these boundaries and there's safety. And yet we can see the road ahead, but we don't know what lies there, right? So really having healthy boundaries with ourselves, with others, so important to how we flourish within our lives. And they can change. That's just it. Like boundaries get to change and it's okay, right? So these are some questions that the author of Anxious Parent, Anxious Child, Lynn Lyons, these are variations of some questions that she's been asking her audiences that you can use. What new things have you discovered about yourself during this time? Right? What is something you're proud about the way you've coped during COVID? And then what is something unexpected about this time that you've come to understand in a new way? And that can be positive or negative. So maybe you can drop in the chat the answer to number 3. How would you answer number 3? What is something unexpected about this time that you've come to understand in a new way? Went back to teaching in person, not knowing how it would go. Yeah. How much you need to get outside to recharge. Amen, right? So making that commitment to yourself. And talking about that with your family too. Or maybe you have an accountability buddy that you just text and say, I spent 5 minutes outside today. Yeah, it is challenging. And so maybe one thing you can ask is your child, like, what time would be good for you to go outside, and giving them a choice. You have to go outside with me. Here's 2 different options, Marissa wrote, I'm very extroverted, love being around people, learned how to be alone, and have come to enjoy time by myself. Lovely. We don't have all the answers. Amen, Terry. And Kristen, my child can be independent in ways I never could have expected. And also, I'm a happier person if I make the time each day to get out for a walk and run. Thank you. The choice option is good. Yeah. Lovely. Yes. So all of these, like, can we come to our lives with curiosity and kindness? Like, can we see our child might be in distress and know that, like, oh, all they need is to be validated right now, and not try to rush in and rescue them and make it better. That you can just say, wow, I see that you're having difficulty. Can you tell me more about that? Oh, Mary, I love this. I'm a better cook than I thought I was. Yeah, I'm cooking a lot, right? We're all cooking a lot more than we thought we would be. Okay. So it's really important, right, to fill your bucket. So maybe you make yourself a list right now. Just take a few moments to jot down, whether it's on your computer, on the notes section on your phone, or maybe you have a piece of paper and a pen that you can commit to, like maybe not even committing right now, but just doing a brain dump for a few moments of what are the activities that fill your bucket personally. So just take a few moments to do that. Okay, so one more minute. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's things that help to recharge you. It can be coloring, it could be playing the piano, it could be whatever it is. Watching a funny YouTube video for 2 minutes. There's a laughing baby YouTube video that I love to watch. You can just Google laughing babies and it'll come up. Okay. So if you don't mind, go ahead and just drop in the chat how that was for you. How was it did you have any aha moments or anything unexpected come up, or, being able to be more focused? You just dump in the chat. Reminds you of what you enjoy. Yeah, not unexpected, but need to get more committed, spending time with all members of the family together. Yeah, beautiful. So the softening, remember, like, where can we just let go around? Like, what is one thing? And just, we do these and then we're like, oh, this is all great information. So just take one thing. Don't overload yourself. Just take one thing. And just remember that, yeah, taking deep breaths. So set the timer on your phone, because we forget to do that, right? Or maybe it's every time that you brush your teeth. Or maybe it's every time that you go to cook, right? Or maybe it's every time that you come back from going to the bathroom, whatever it is. But tie it into an activity that you're already doing, because that is going to be the easiest way for you to integrate a new habit, right? Yeah. And just remember these two words, for now, like, oh, this might be your new mantra. This might be it, right? For now. Like the weather system, right? Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. And if we can just say, oh, for now, and especially for those of us with adolescents, like their minds can think like, this is the way it's always going to be. They get into these thought patterns, and, and we do too as adults, like, wow, it is never going to get better. And so we can just introduce them to this concept, like putting your hand on your heart and like, oh, for now. I'm feeling really angry for now. I'm feeling really frustrated for now. I'm feeling anxious for now. Don't make, like, if the more that we can normalize these experiences, the better we all are. We're in this together. So remember to reach out for help when you need it, because there are so many commonalities. I mean, in the chat, when we, talked about our challenging moments, like we're so resistant because our friends look like they have it all together on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. No, they don't. That's what I'm going to say. We are all struggling, all of us, for crying out loud. Let's just be real, right? And reach out and ask for help when you need it. Check in on a friend. So here's the thing. One of the things that you can do to increase your happiness, if you all are familiar with Sean Acor or Acor, He wrote The Happiness Advantage. Their research has his organization and research through Harvard. There are 5 things that you can do to increase your happiness. One of them is random acts of kindness for just 2 minutes a day. So you're going to send a text or an email to a friend or a loved one telling them how much they matter to you. 3 gratitudes, exercise, meditation, or journaling. Just for 2 minutes a day. Any one of those activities will improve your life. And not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Okay? Just remember that, Mother Teresa. So it's in the small things. And I just wanted to let you know, I'm having we'll go to questions in a moment. I just want to finish this up. I'm having a teen. It's 4 weeks, a teen group in terms of building resilience. And that starts February 22nd on Monday afternoons. And then this, if you go ahead and place your phone up to this QR code, you should be able and prompted to get an automatic download of the compassionate communication slide on your phone, as well as an opportunity to enter a drawing for a 1-hour session with me. So if you go ahead and do that, just put your phone up to that QR code. It should bring you to be able to download on your screen. And you'll enter, and I'll get in touch with whoever wins after the presentation. And then this is my contact information, but I want to keep the QR code up while we go through questions. So let's go ahead and ask questions. We are right on time. So anyone have any questions for me? I'm here.
Thank you, Corinne. We'll just give them a couple of minutes to
Sure.
type questions.
Sure. Let me go back to that. It's also on my website. If you go to my website for the information on the teens here, this is the best place to go, is my website, and go under events, and you can find information there. And the teen group are for grades 9 through 12, although I am taking some 8th graders. And I do work with teens, young adults, and adults one-on-one. So if you have also teens of a certain age that I'm not covering, or middle schoolers, please reach out and we can work something out, because I also work with families as well.
Jackie, can you restate your question? She says, how can we help a student who went from A to F, friend of mine? Maybe from in grades? I'm not quite sure. In grades. So how can you help a student who went from an A to an F?
Is it your child, or is it someone else's? Like, are you a teacher and asking that about your student, or are you asking that as a parent? Okay, so someone else. Is that you're a teacher, or it's a friend's child? Okay, so Jackie, I'll answer Jackie's question first, and then Nevin. So in terms of grades, again, I would just be curious. I had a friend who's going through this with a high schooler. Their son, failed English, and he's 16. And so being able to be curious, like that iceberg, if you can think of that iceberg slide, like try and find out what's going on underneath, because there's a huge, usually there's also, in our culture, an A student going to an F, there's got to be so much shame, around that. So if we can just normalize, like, this is a really tough time. You've never gone through something like this, and I want to help. So I'm just wondering how I might be able to help and get the teacher involved. I mean, that's what I would do. This is not my area of expertise, right? In terms of giving advice that way. I would also reach out to the counselor, to get some suggestions from them, but definitely speak to the teacher. So the kids, because this person is probably struggling and is needing support and not shame in any way. So the kids in computer time, how do we limit their use of electronics? That is a really good question, because I talked about the dopamine, right? And their need for connection. And right now we're in this virtual world. So one of the things that you might want to try, like, everything is a suggestion, right? Is that as a family, you have a few hours every day, or a few hours, maybe like Friday nights from 5 to 9 p.m. Everybody's phone in the house, everybody's off screens, right? And you play games, or if the only screen that you have is the TV, right? Or you're watching a movie that is interactive, or you're having a game night with other family members, or maybe it's not for 4 hours, maybe it's 2 hours, or maybe it's an hour every day around dinner. So maybe it's from 5:30 to 7:30 or 5:30 to 6:30 every night, and a longer chunk on the weekend. Because what's curious is that and then ask, how do you feel without the phone? Like, before COVID, the average amount of time that we check our phone, 150 times a day. 150 times a day. And so what we can do is sort of use the phone as an experiment. Instead of demonizing the phone, like, let's be curious. Like, turn the phone off. Hold it in your hand. Notice how you feel about it. Take a moment and take a pause. And then turn it on. But don't check any messages, right? Notice how you feel in your body when you do that. Then check a message and not answer, and notice how you feel, right? Like, there are ways that we can, because we want to bring awareness. The more we make it punitive, the worse it is, right? Like, we feel badly about our own, like, sometimes I feel badly around my phone use, right? Like, we can all, and another thing is just be curious. Like, the iPhone, I don't know Samsung or any other, or Androids, but the iPhone, it tells you what your screen usage is for the week, on a daily basis, right? What your average, so check in as a family around that. And maybe you discuss, like, where we want to be as a family, right? Yeah. So just really, like, bringing awareness instead of, like, this is a way of life, right? So how can we make it more integrative? And how can we spend more time outside and get them to notice how they're feeling? Like, my son, we went through, I have two sons that are, one's 20 and one's 18. And when they were younger, Fortnite was a big deal. But my 20-year-old really wasn't into video games. He really didn't play Fortnite, where my younger one did. And there was a time, as a consequence, he was taken off Fortnite. He had played it too late in the night, whatever it was, and he couldn't go out with it. I think it was 2 weeks. We worked it out, like, I had worked it out with him. And he noticed himself how he was off of the game versus on it. And he created a guideline for himself, like, I'm not going to use it more than an hour and a half, or whatever it was, because it is a way for them to connect socially. And at the same time, it does, it's not, as we know, it's not the best thing for them to be on it 6 or 7 hours at a time. So I hope that is helpful to your question.
Corinne, you had mentioned 2 books. One was by Daniel Siegel, and what was the other book?
Oh my goodness. Can someone help me out? What was the other one I said? you know what? I can send you a list of books, Lisa, that I would recommend.
Great.
Dan Siegel has a lot of books that I read, Brainstorm, and then The Power of Showing Up. And then there's also an author, her name is Shafali Tisbari, and she wrote a book called The Awakened Family. And you can follow her on Facebook. She's got a lot of, and Dan Siegel as well. Those are two of my favorite authors and speakers and teachers, in terms of how you show up authentically. The other person around compassion is Kristen Neff. So you can look up her stuff. It's a KRISTINNEFF. So
I'll send all of that out when we finish up with the recording. And when I send everybody the recording, I'll just send everything.
yes, and thank you to Judy, because it was Lynn Lyons who wrote the book Anxious Parent, Anxious Child. Thank you. That was the other book I mentioned. So be the thermostat, not the thermometer, right? That's what, I'm the thermostat, and then the superpowers, and,
Do you work with sixth graders, middle schoolers?
Yes, I do. I haven't done sixth graders virtually. Actually, yeah, it's just middle schoolers that I've worked, like seventh and eighth graders. I haven't done sixth graders virtually. I've done a lot of work in person, but I'm just being, real. And you can go to my website and schedule a discovery call with me. It's a 20-minute call for free. And then I'm also having a webinar next Thursday at noon and 7 p.m. that's free, that talks about my Conquer program. And it's about conquering the invisible. So I talk a little bit more, and it'll be different exercises. So it's a much different presentation. So you'll get different tools there if you want to attend that. That's also on my homepage to sign up for that.
Well, Corinne, I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for participating, and hope everybody has a good day.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much, and please reach out if you have any questions personally. I'm here for you. We're here for you.